Hi, I'm Jason Hale with Lessons from Life Builders. You know, in a society where now more than ever we're meeting virtually, we're meeting through doctored screens, such as the environment around me now. I've got lights and equipment in a kind of a manufactured setting. I can make it be what I want it to appear. We have, you know, we've got the picture and the things around and the way that we want our environment, and so it's nice to be able to control our own environments. There's nothing wrong with that, to set the tone, set the ambiance. And obviously in daily lives, there's nothing wrong with, combing our hair, brushing our teeth. We try to take care of ourselves, but there's a deeper layer sometimes behind the human mask. And so this thought has been personal to me. It's certainly not a accusation or pointing a finger at anybody, other than just something that's been resonating in my spirit. And it's based off of a quote of it. It's actually a state motto that I heard probably 6 or 7 years ago, that it kind of resonated with me, and I actually hung it on the door of a place that I had worked when I first entered into the field counseling, coming out of ministry. And the quote is Esse Quam Videri, and it means to be rather than to see. And this is actually North Carolina's state motto. And there's a little bit of an interesting story behind it as I looked into it, that they actually adopted a state motto in Latin, obviously, one of the last original 13 colony states to do so. And so I thought it was interesting that they decided just in 1893 to add, it almost feels a little bit of a dig, like there was maybe some pressure to say, hey, you guys need a Latin state motto too. And so they come up with this one of, hey, to be rather than to seem. And there's a lot of depth to that statement. That statement actually was adapted from some writings of Cicero, I think. Back in about 106 BC was he born. Supposedly a Roman orator, one of the great writers and orators of Roman time. And so it's out of his writings, actually titled about friendship and about being old, ancient writings. And so it's pulled from that. And so it's actually adapted in a couple ways. And I'll read one or two of the ways that's written. So North Carolina adapts it as to be rather than to seem. The original writings in different translations might be written in a way such as, the fact is that fewer people are endowed with virtue than wish to be thought to be so. That one feels a little bit of a dig. Then there are other translations such as, the numbers of the really virtuous are not so great as they appear to be. Now, the one I really liked was actually one of the more modern ones. This is translated from On Old Age and on Friendship by Frank Copley in 1967. And the way this is worded, I think, is where we want to pick up on the thought. And it says, not nearly so many people want actually to be possessed of virtue as want to appear to be possessed of it. And so, as I've thought on this thought, beginning with myself, in a society where it's very difficult to be allowed to be weak or challenged or broken or transparent or authentic, and more and more and more so in a virtual world where we can dictate how we appear and how we sound and how we look to the world around us, how often are we dismissed more and more in our worlds as, well, we ran his documents through the computer, and the computer flagged it as, this isn't a good candidate. Even in the age of applying for jobs or getting your foot in the door, even, it's very difficult to get a personal touch in our society, even before all the current changes. And so my hope is not to emphasize the idea that we're all faking it and we We want to be seen as good rather than be good. Even though there's certainly the side of this argument that I know for me, the work of being virtuous, of being what I desire to be, is much more profound and thorough and difficult and challenging than to put on the performance of being. And so rather than the mask and the outward appearance and putting on the display, which is certainly can be exhausting and challenging and draining in itself, the actual internal work of becoming a person of value, becoming a person that we desire to be, is sometimes really daunting. It's really overwhelming that I'm so often not what I would like to be. And so that's kind of more the point I'd like to emphasize for a few minutes together, is that in a society where we're more and more and more, it's nothing new to be judged by our appearance, judged by our weakest points rather than our greatest, to be dismissed as soon as the fault is seen, the flaw is seen, dismissed as, well, not good enough, not appropriate, not able. And so our society already is, for decades, been geared towards dismissing each other based on our weakest parts rather than celebrating each other based on our strongest parts. And I see in my own life and in society as a whole, and now in this era where we are being rapidly forced into a virtual world together, that I can appear to you whatever I want to be. And that's, there's nothing wrong with that. We put energy and effort into setting a tone and coming off appealing. And I like creativity. I like artistic expression. I like the power of technology and what we can do. But the danger of that is that slowly, and I've seen it in my own self, the work done on the inside is less and less and less, because I could present to you in a soundbite that I am something that I'm not really. And it's easy to do that. It's easy for me to convince you. I think of the Chester cat, right, in Alice in Wonderland. I can give you the smile and I can appear to be whatever. And boy, doesn't that ring true, whether it's our political worlds, whether it's our personal worlds, Hollywood and stardom. And I'm not knocking any of these fields. I'm saying that as a humankind living together, it's becoming harder and harder to be authentic. It's becoming harder and harder to let each other see our weak parts, to let each other see behind the veil, to say, hey, I'm not okay. Hey, I am broken. Hey, I do have these struggles. I am a sinful person, if we want to say it that way, that I'm not all that I'd like to be. And sometimes I'm not even what I'm trying to appear to be, because certainly to make it through this world, we have to put on certain pretenses, certain masks, certain displays, certain persona, right? Another Greek term from ancient theater times, persona, a mask being worn in theater, which of course we get personality. And so to develop our character, rather than just a personality, to be a person of depth, by default really requires us to be vulnerable, to allow ourselves to be seen, and to have time to practice out what we're not as we're becoming it. And so it concerns me that in our society, it's becoming harder and harder to be allowed to be that we can easily be dismissed and checked off at a glance if we don't display instantly at first impression, if we can't perform instantly, if we're not at the top of the class, the top rated, we're missing out on the substance and value that each other offers beyond our appearance, beyond our faults, beyond what I'm not good at. Going back to this theme of Latin words and Greek times, and the classroom that we see modeled now, it became more developed in that era, where it was a group of people listening to an orator and an instructor. But if you go back prior to those times. In the Jewish model, or what we see Christ doing, this sense of discipleship, where it's actually taking a group of people through life with you, and you see Jesus actually do it in the Bible. He doesn't put the same demand and expectation and relationship on each and every person. There's a personal touch. Peter has an attribute, Thomas, James, John, they all have different attributes, and Christ addresses those people in different ways. And there's something I think that we could return to as a society, is this idea of living life together. Says, I'm not everything you are. I'm not good at the same things you are. I might be terrible at certain things, but don't dismiss what I could offer that you might miss when you see my fault, my failure, my struggle, my external. We're becoming more and more so, not just as a culture in America or a certain area, but I think just worldwide. It's this idea of survival of the fittest, and weeding out the weak and all those things. I think that what backfires in that is that we're only harming ourselves and dismissing the value that someone might offer when we don't take time to look behind the veil and say, okay, you're not everything in the world. You're not great at all things, but what are you good at? And developing that in a person. And so I think this idea of to be rather than to seem, the demand to do the opposite of that is getting greater and greater. That I need to perform, I need to strive, I need to put on the appearance, I need to keep up. I'm going to be left behind, left out, dismissed, disregarded if I don't put on the display that I'm everything you need me to be. And I know for my own journey, and I hope I can encourage others out there, I really want to return to being rather than seeming. I want something in me, God's help, accountability around me. I don't want to drift into putting on a display of something I'm not. I would rather, I guess I would say it as, I desire the freedom and the openness again to return to saying I'm not what I want to be, and be transparent and authentic, because when my struggles in the light, I have much more hope of becoming what I'm trying to be than when I have to hide and dismiss and disguise and cover up all that part of me that is not healthy, it's not doing well, and it's not where I want it to be. And there's parts of me that are never going to be what everyone wants them to be. There's parts of you that are not going to be maybe what you desire. And so that as a whole, we need to dismiss the idea that I can compete and be better than you, or be the same as you. I can be me and you can be you. And I think returning to an idea of being allowed to be transparent and open so that we can grow and not have to be perfect, and to be broken, and to be raw and ugly and smelly and imperfect in an atmosphere of grace and love and forgiveness that is the real message and gift of God in Christ. Returning to that as a society, then we begin to get the gifts that are behind our imperfections. The things that you may not see in a person when they're constantly hiding and trying to perform and trying to live up to some standard that they're not able. So I think on one hand, allowing an authenticity where we can be and grow and become as we're growing, and also a grace and a mercy that says, okay, you're not all that you would like to be, and maybe there's parts of us that are never going to be what we'd like them to be, but that's okay too. This is not a competition. This is not a race. It's not life is a journey, and we're in it together. And I think this current situation and this era we're coming through with the pandemic and different things culturally is reminding us that we're in this together. We feel disconnected, isolated. People are frustrated to not be at work and not be out, and so you miss having dinner with friends and different things. So I hope that we can be reminded in an age where virtual meeting and technology is awesome, but let us not lose touch with I am not always going to be the doctored, prepared, practice setting and performance and image that's on the screen. That I'm going to be human. I'm going to let you down. I'm going to be broken. I'm going to curse if I drop something on my toe. Not all of us will, and maybe I won't, maybe you won't, but maybe I will. And so the point is, can I be what I am as I'm becoming what I'm trying to be? And that way, if I'm allowed that, I don't have to perform and pretend to be what I'm not, because I think our society has enough of that. We have too much of that. And when the pressure's on, we've not been tested and our character's not been developed. And this goes for me too, that we can return to an era through all this where we can be authentic and open and transparent with one another without feeling the pressure to just to seem rather than to be, but rather to be rather than to seem, and not to just have to perform and display. So I wanted to share that thought with you, this Esse Quam Videri, in an era where we're more and more meeting through screens and lights and cameras, which is great. Thank God for that. It's cool. Take advantage of it. It's exciting. I like it. I enjoy it. But I want to be able to also be real and transparent. And I'm going to be working on some messages. I think maybe sharing some of that transparency as I move into that. I want to be able to express brokenness and authenticity, and remind everyone out there that we're not the doctored images of videos. We're real human beings living real lives, and there's a lot of folks out there struggling. I'm praying for you. Pray for me. If we can do anything to help, please let me know. You can visit us on YouTube at Lessons for Life Builders, on Facebook as well, and we look forward to seeing you again. Thanks for tuning in and listening to this message. God bless you. And again, I'm Jason Hale with Lessons from Life Builders.